What's not selling in Florida? Well, today I want to share that information, but first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Troy Funk, and it's Funk, F-U-N-K, Fun-K. I am a licensed real estate broker in the state of Florida. I've been in sales going on 40 years. My focus is to give you value, and if I give you value, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber, and certainly hit that bell so we can stay in touch. So what's not selling in Florida? Well, first off, let me tell you where I'm at in Florida. I'm in an area called Sapphire Shores. It's just west of the trail. It's on the bayfront in Sarasota. This is an absolutely beautiful area, and it's right by the John and Mabel Ringling Museum. I want to break this down into three main facts, and these are facts that I would certainly like to debate about because I get a lot of comments, and I love comments, especially the ones that say, Troy, you're very honest. You say it the way you see it, even though it's not necessarily the popular direction that other people are taking. You're very clear in your information, and that is my focus, is to be very clear. I create a lot of videos that discourage people from moving to Florida, and if you don't want to come to Florida, that's okay. We have no problem with a mass of people that are continuing to come here. And so with that, let's just talk about clear facts, or what I would say are absolutely clear facts. Fact number one, last year, California lost approximately 340,000 people. The same time in Florida, we had about 320,000 people come to our state. Now, not everybody left California to move to Florida, but we've seen a huge migration of wealth coming into Florida. I mean, with that, our population has gone up so much, and so has the property values, and not everybody is happy about the growth of Florida. A lot of people want to see the market crash. Well, what's it going to take to have a real estate crash? The reality is we're going to have to see a huge imbalance of supply and demand. We're going to have to see the supply of inventory go way up, the demand go way down. As such, sellers need to sell. There's not a buyer market, and the property values will fall. Is that going to happen? Well, with that, I want to talk about one of the worst real estate markets in the country right now, and that is San Francisco, California. Since I was the age of 10 years old, I lived in the Bay Area of San Francisco. My father worked in San Francisco. We visited that market frequently. I love San Francisco. It's an area that's absolutely beautiful. I think it's probably one of the most beautiful big cities in the United States. It has a lot of culture, has a lot of history to it, and it's certainly been a very progressive place. Today, I was there a couple of weeks ago, and it broke my heart what has happened to San Francisco. To be real short about that, the homeless situation is horrific, and there feels like there's more homeless people in the city than you see tourists. As such, businesses are closed down. Fisherman's Wharf is boarded up. You see a restaurant that was in business for almost 100 years out of business. And if you try to do any retail shopping there, they will escort you through the store to show you what you can buy. Even a tie-dye t-shirt in Haight-Ashbury. San Francisco having some serious problems with their market right now, where it's not an area of demand. It's not an area as beautiful as it is, and as much as it's attracted so many tourists, it's not attracting them anymore. Not with the problem with homelessness, the problem that shops are boarded up. And San Francisco is a sad example of what Florida does not want to see happen to our state. And a lot of Floridians are saying, if you're moving here from California, don't ruin our state. So that's a market that's absolutely crashing because the crime problem right now. And with that's an example of a real estate crash. Another example would be areas like Austin, Texas, and also Las Vegas, where you have a supply imbalance problem. The supply imbalance problem mainly because they've overbuilt. They've built more housing there than the market can absorb right now. As such, you have more housing for sale than buyers that could absorb the expense of that. They're falling because of a supply-demand imbalance. So what does that leave for Florida? As I mentioned, there's three facts that I want to focus on. The first fact being that we have seen this huge migration of people moving into Florida. That is an absolute fact. At a rate of about 1,000 people a day have been moving to Florida. That's fact number one. Fact number two, we have had historically low interest rates. And as such, we've had a lot of people in that time period refinance their home if it's a house that they like and they want to stay in, or if they're buying a property, buyers have gotten mortgages at historically low interest rates. What does that mean today with our market as far as supply and demand? If you were fortunate enough to get financing at an interest rate below 3.5% fixed, the reality is you're probably not going to sell your house. It does not make sense to sell your house. Group of people that are not selling in Florida, people that have mortgages with low interest rates. Yes, some will sell, but the majority are going to say this does not make any sense. Even if your property value falls considerably, if the payment is less than rent, it doesn't make sense to sell. This is going to cause a huge supply imbalance, because normally sellers would sell their property, not in a market where if they have a mortgage that's at a low interest rate, a lot of sellers are going to choose not to sell their property. This is going to cause a supply imbalance moving forward in a market that will become somewhat abnormal. We're not going to see an abundance of those owners go on the market. As such, it doesn't make sense for them to sell. The second group, we have foreclosures coming up. We know that there has been a foreclosure moratorium that has been in existence for some time. Banks can start foreclosing. We are seeing foreclosures pick up, but what does that mean? The reality, the honesty of that. Well, I'm handling pre-foreclosures, people that are in foreclosure that need to sell. But here's the interesting fact with that. Last time we had this happen, we had owners that owed more on their property than what their property is worth. That is not the case this time. In fact, what's really interesting, a lot of the sellers that I represent in the sale of their property, they have a lot of equity. And in some cases, they purchased their home with little or no money down. They haven't made a mortgage payment in 2 years, and the bank's about to foreclose. We sell their property and they still walk out of that home with upwards of $100,000, having not made a mortgage payment in 2 years and still walk out with a lot of equity. And why? Because the property values have gone up so much in the last few years. So even owners that are in distress foreclosure, they can sell, they can get out. And if they don't sell, they're not going to receive all their equity. So it's kind of an interesting time that even though we're seeing a lot of foreclosures, people that need to sell can normally sell and walk out and still make and still get the equity out of their property. So as such, that clearly is not going to be a big bubble of inventory coming on the market of distressed foreclosure properties. But let's just say the bank does foreclose and takes possession of the property. Now that's something that's really interesting, and I got some insight on recently. About a year ago, I got a request, hedge fund I would call that was looking at selling their assets. Now they acquired 17 properties here in Sarasota, and they acquired them at the courthouse steps. And normally the banks would sell those properties, those would come on the market. Not in this case. The hedge fund kept the asset. So they owned the defaulted mortgage, they bought it from the bank, and then they foreclosed, they took possession of the property, and they rented the property. They didn't put it on the market. Those homes did not hit the market. And I see that moving forward. I see that as the distressed market starts to become more of a player in this marketplace, that if it's a foreclosure, if the mortgage, the asset is owned by hedge funds are not necessarily going to turn around and sell the property. They're going to keep it as a rental property. Last time when we saw this huge imbalance of supply and demand, we saw a huge amount of foreclosures hit the market. As such, the inventory was extremely high. As such, we had a huge inventory of property on the market. The demand was not there, and property values absolutely plummeted. This time, the foreclosure market is not going to look that way. And I feel pretty confident in saying that for the reason that I know the hedge funds are not necessarily selling their property. So let's talk about who's not selling. Hedge funds. Hedge funds are not selling their assets. And think about this. Does it make sense for hedge funds to sell? Because Real estate is an asset to them. They purchase properties when they're low, and then they turn around and they've got interest rates that were low, and their rents are more than enough to cover that, and they're paying that asset off. So hedge funds own a lot of property. As such, I don't think we're going to see hedge funds sell assets. Now, if something unforeseen happens, so let's just say hedge funds started selling off their assets. Hedge funds own so much real estate, especially here in the state of Florida, that could crash the market. I don't see that happening. So in short, there's two types of sellers that are not going to be selling, I believe, in this marketplace. People that have low interest rates because it doesn't make sense, and hedge funds that own so much of this marketplace right now. I don't think they're going to sell. So what is that going to do to the real estate market? My predictions, I think, yes, we're seeing some bubbles here. I think we're seeing some builder bubbles where builders have overbuilt. They need to lower their prices. Probably a good time to look at buying a builder home, even though everyone's saying run, run, run. The fact is, that's a problem that will self-correct. As builders sell their inventory off, they're in the business of building houses. So once they get caught up with that, the market their inventory will balance out and it will normalize. But in essence, that's a short-term problem, not a long-term problem. So here's where people are upset. People are upset saying, look, this is ridiculous. The market went up way too fast, too quick. We want to see a market correction. We want to see property values go down, especially in Florida, and especially somebody that's been in Florida for a long time. Well, here's the reality. They may not. They may adjust a little bit, but they may not go down too much. And what that means is that there was a window of opportunity. There was a window of opportunity when real estate was at a lower price and people didn't buy, right? There was a window of opportunity when interest rates were at historical low interest rates. People still didn't buy. And now you're waiting for the real estate crash and then you're going to buy. I don't know. So I did a video talking about people that are not buying right now and what does that mean. And the best time to buy real estate is when you can afford it. So real estate is an asset. And when you buy that asset and you hold on to it long term, you're going to do better off than always being that person that, wait, I didn't buy when the interest rates were low. I didn't buy when the property values were low. I'm just going to wait for the market to correct and then I'll buy. Of course, everybody's situation is different on when's the right time to buy real estate. But the idea is there is always just a window of opportunity when it's right, when you can afford property. And when you can afford property, if you can buy property, it's normally a good decision to do so, especially if you look at the long term. Short term, yes, we're seeing some fluctuations in the market because we need to. If it's an area that has high crime, it makes sense that property values are going to go down. If it's an area that's overbuilt with new construction, it makes sense that property values are going to go down. So we're seeing a lot of fluctuation in the marketplace. But if you find the right property and you can afford it, it might be a good time to consider buying it. So as such, I hope I've given you some value. And if I have, please hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber, and certainly check on my website, troyfunk.com. My website covers the entire state of Florida. So if you're looking for real estate anywhere in the state of Florida, this website will immediately show you properties that are for sale. If you see anything you like, hit the little heart there to say it's a favorite choice. Either myself or one of my colleagues will call you back, and we want to be a resource to find you that right property in Florida. So again, thank you for your time. I wish you well. I look forward to seeing you on my next video.